Hello, everybody. Hi. Welcome to Anderson Ranch and our summer faculty lecture series. I'm Lindsay Yeager, studio coordinator of painting, drawing, and printmaking. I'm excited to introduce Hiroki Morinoue and Betsy Alwin tonight. Before we begin, please take a moment to silence your cell phones. I want to start by recognizing that the Anderson Ranch campus resides on the historic tribal lands of the Ute people who called this area home for over 800 years. In honor of this legacy, we focus on building an inclusive community here, maintaining this as a place for inspiration and community in the center of the Rocky Mountains. Tonight's program will consist of 2 faculty lectures followed by a Q&A. I'd like to start by introducing Hiroki Morinoue. Hiroki received his BFA from the California College of the Arts. He began teaching Mokuhanga at Anderson Ranch over 20 years ago. He's traveled to Japan for an intensive artist in residence program sponsored by the Mokuhanga Innovation Laboratory and attended the 2nd International Mokuhanga Conference and Satellite Program in Tokyo. Please join me in welcoming Hiroki Morinoue.
Hello. I should say aloha. I just flew in from direct flight from Kona to Denver and then to Aspen. So they let me speak first before I fall asleep. So I'm here right now. Let's see. The monitor is here. I was going to say when I started here, there was a tent. Remember, summer started at the Anderson Ranch with a tent. This lecture hall wasn't here. This might have been about 30 years ago. And Pam, how long ago was that? 30? Almost 30 years ago. All right. So the lecture was in a tent, but this started the Anderson Ranch. There was all the interns put the big white tent off, and that was the beginning of summer. And sometimes the wind would blow. Well, the speakers will talk. You can hear some of the speakers now and then, but there were old couches, recycled chairs, and now look at what you have here. A beautiful hall for fundraising, lectures, all kinds of events. Anyway, since I've been here, I also started our own art center in the Big Island of Kona, and we've brought Liz Farrell from here, and Richard Notkins, Doug Casebeer, and many artists that I met here, also participating in our art center in Kona. Anyway, let's begin. Hawaii was the first state in the countries to start the 1% bill for the arts. It was started by Alfred Price. He was a retired architect from Europe and wanted to see art and architecture come together again. So he started the State Foundation of Culture and the Arts. So it pronounced, so Hawaii was a state, and now almost every state in the country has the same program. 1% of the art for any public building, a library, or a new office, or a state building, or for any official building, 1% of the money goes to commissions. And so Hawaii was the first, and that's why I'm not the only artist. There's many artists that has seen large projects been built in to fit the architecture at that time. So this is one of my first projects. This piece is called Mauka Makai, and the Hawaiians looked at their land differently from we Westerners. We divided up in squares or rectangular shapes. The Hawaiians look at as a food source. So you have food from the ocean, and you have food from the mountains. So it's pie-shaped. The land is identified with pie-shape because you can benefit from the ocean and the mountain. So this piece is called Mauka Makai, and let's see if I could run this. This is a drawing. There's my marquette there in color. And in those days required a life-size drawing. So this is a 90-foot drawing on plastic, so I could transfer the image to a wooden panel. And I'll go quickly. This is the first. 90 feet is quite intimidating, so I decided, well, I'll do 30 feet at a time. I think I can handle that. And so this is the first panel. It starts from the mountain where the lava flows. So you can see the red there and the organic patterns of the lava. And those finger with the black and yellow there are patterns of the lava flow. And there's hundreds of layers of lava over the thousands of years. And that's how the islands were built. And Hawaii, the big island that I live, is the youngest. Kauai is the oldest. So Hawaii, we still have very active volcanoes in Hawaii, big island. Here's some details. Mauka Makai, mountain to the sea. And there we hear at the ocean of the water is for food and also recreation. I walked to the beach every Sunday as a child. So, it's a playground for us. But this is the first time I used a Hawaiian quilt pattern as part of the image there. That's a breadfruit. It's an ulu. It's a basic starch for the Hawaiian people. So those patterns of leaves and round fruits is called breadfruit, or we call ulu. And whenever I have a large project, my daughter is a dancer in New York. I would invite her back, and she's very talented. And she can be my boss, too. And there were, just for scale, to show you the last 30 foot, I ended this painting with the night sea. And if you live on the island, you want to feel how powerful the ocean is, go at night. And you can see it breathing, you can hear it breathing, you can feel the energy of the ocean. So I ended the painting with a night sea. We're there, that's my wife, we're there, it's for scale. And that's the painting itself, that's 90 feet without the relief panels on top and bottom. And it goes into Hawaii Convention Center. It's a beautiful architecture. It looks like the Denver airport with the same translucent light tent roof. And it has this fabricated metal palm trees in there. This is another commission from the First Hawaiian Bank. I've done several. And this is also about mountain to the sea, because it's our food sauce. I have some detail that's used, in this case, Joseph Albert's Homage to the Square, because the ocean is our playground, as I mentioned. And the most dramatic part of this painting is the division between the night and the day sky. And this looks like Virginia, doesn't it? But it's the classical Greek architecture in Hawaii. This is our state library. And I had a commission. This is a marquette for a 2,000-foot tile mural on the floor. Remember, for any improvement, for any public building, there's an art commission. And there's many artists besides me that has gotten that. And so this is my study or my marquette for the project. I'm just having fun there. I haven't done a tile mural before, so I had to make a life-size one out of wood just to see how the patterns may turn out. I'm there for scale. This is, by the way, one of my famous yukata or Japanese kimono pattern. It's raindrops. You can feel the rhythm and the different stages of the ripples. And here's a life-size drawing again. I had to do two, one for myself to cut the stencil for the sandblasting and one for the tile setter to set the tiles. The numbers you see, 94 there, 106, those are for the different color tiles. And there's my drawing there, dear Lane. It fit perfectly. I was so happy. Yeah, on this is like Michelangelo. Instead of the ceiling, they're making little holes to lay out the tile patterns and my patterns of rocks and water and raindrops. By the way, the guy with the hat and the shoes, he's the Rembrandt of tile setters. He's very good. He can cut anything you want to have cut on there. And while they're setting the tiles, we're making stencils. So the green things there are rubber, linoleum, so that's where it bounces the sands off, and the sandblasting cuts the hard stuff, the tile itself. So we made 300 patterns of rocks, or different sizes rocks. That's an example how the stencil works. And then we did a little experimenting, cut tiles and sandblasted on this side. And there he is, working with a much heavier sandblaster than we had. Worked day and night for 2 days. 12 o'clock, the second day, we got to peel out the stencil. And by morning, it was all cleared up. It's nice about working with professionals. They get the job done. Before the library was open, it was all clean. Another project for a school. So whenever there's a new building, this is the library of the school. There's a commission available. Those are friends that helped me install this mural on concrete. Not a great architecture. I was hoping it goes to another building, but that's what we dealt with. First Hawaiian Bank, I've done several large projects. This one was the most personal. It's remember the AIDS in 1980s, where people sent pieces of a quilt to Washington, and they put it all together there. When AIDS was its peak concern, well, whenever my daughter is a dancer, I have 2 daughters. They were dancers in New York, so I made 9 trips there, moving them. I moved them 9 times in New York. Bought all my tools and rebuilt things and moved them. But I flew over the country back and forth. I saw these beautiful patterns. So I quilted them all together. You'll see some irrigation patterns, some symbols. One of my favorite one is with the human figure with the ripples like water. That's a Hopi Indian pattern for harmony. Anyway, before doing these projects, all these large projects, I was a watercolorist, and that's all I did for 14 years. Here's in a very early watercolor. And so that's all I did. 14 years, I was over-specialized. This is from the farm that I farmed in Hawaii. A little bit of Andrew Wyeth here. I was young, I could do 3 paintings a day. All the Filipino men that worked for my father, I went to their homes and did portraits of them. And this is when I became a full-time artist. I crucified my work shirt, pinned it up, and became a full-time artist, 1974. Then I went around and painted all the landscape. It was this physical world that I wanted to capture in the place I lived. And this is a heiau, it's a temple that the Hawaiian built. This is dedicated for sports. And I got known for my painting of lava rocks and stones and patterns. So I got a residency at the Hawaii Volcano National Park. And these are some of the images. These are all watercolors. And I did a few oil paintings. This is a 4 by 8 foot oil painting. There's a little figure in the middle. If you may see a profile there of an angel. So we have two tall mountains. They're Mauna Loa, Mauna Kea, and they're both about 14,000 foot. So the mountain you're looking at the very top there, it's Mauna Loa. It means a long mountain. It's misleading. It looks flat, but it is 14,000 feet. Then I got a residency in Japan, and my first time for winter. I got a small studio, 8 by 8 foot, but I did some large paintings in that little studio, more watercolors. Continue to paint rocks in a different form. Rivers in Japan. And from observing nature for many years, I decided, well, I can just make it up. So all these paintings, when I got back from Hawaii, I just made them up. I just did my own rocks and light and patterns. These are large 8-foot watercolors. And then I got involved with Japanese woodblock printing. And I've been doing it for 35 years. And this is the classic 17th century prints. But I was more interested in the modern prints at that time. This is 1970 when I went to Japan. This is Kiyoshi Saito. So I try to print. See can I go back? Let's see, back bottom. See the heavy texture? It's called gomazuri. It's kind of a grainy texture. It's created by the amount of water and pressure you put on. It's hand printed. It's not where the Japanese do not use a press. They print with a little tool called a disc called a baran, and it's how much pressure and water you use each time you print a color. So in the 19th century, they had to did those really fine lines. So the gomazuri, or the texture, was a lot smaller and finer to go with these delicate lines. Those students in my class will discover that tomorrow. Oh, am I going backwards? And some figurative work. Not much, but I did a little. This is Gauguin. Gauguin is in the back with a devil and one of his nudes. Here's a 17th century woman with a Japanese kimono, with a Matisse kimono, I should say. This is French Kiss with Picasso in the background and a 17th century Japanese classic figurative work. Oh, M.C. Escher. Kimono. Wouldn't that be a great kimono? Gertrude Stein, a lacy summer kimono. And this is Bob Arneson. He made, I went to his exhibit in New York. He did portraits of black people with graffiti on their face. I thought that was a powerful statement, so I did him with some graffiti on his face. And when he died, I did this, a homage to Bob Arneson. I'm sure he's been here as a teacher, hasn't he? In the past. And I call this piece clear cutting, so I use his bald head there as a clear cutting, and the trees on the sides is the rest of the forest in there. Let's see. And more prints. So I became a printmaker. And this project was done with Bud Shark. It's called 27 Views of Water. We simplified to 9 views of water. and did a small edition at that time. Since I think Bud Shark was the one that brought me here to Anderson Ranch and introduced me to Melinda, who was the director at that time. And that's how I started to teach here. And from 1991, I think, I can't remember, long ago. There's Bob Anderson, I'm an American. That's after 9/11. And at 9/11, immigration was a big subject again. It just came front line. And so I did all my friends. I did tight portraits so you can tell if they were Asian or Caucasian or Chinese. They were tightly cropped. And I put a generic symbol of a man and a woman there. After 9/11, we lived in this unbalanced world. That's why the scale is tipped on one side and the fire is in the middle. And is the World Trade Center there with the dollar sign on the left upper right-hand corner. And this is our local newspaper. You see that graphic count marks, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I thought that was powerful. So I started to do prints with all those count marks, with flowers. Remember the song, Where Have All the Flowers? Flowers Gone? Gone at the last verse, gone to soldiers, everyone. So I started to do flowers with count marks of dead soldiers. And I end up with 4,500 markings. But I do live in a beautiful area. This is our sunset. I live on the western side of the Big Island. We have great sunset. That's a beautiful one there. So I started to do very small paintings of sky, about 365 of them. This piece is called The Great Horizon. And in the back of each painting, there's a tide calendar. So in Hawaii, we fish when the tide's high, because that's when all the seaweed dries when the tide's low. The tide hits up, knocks the dry seaweed and attracts the fish. The smaller fish comes for the seaweed, and the bigger fish comes for the for the little fish. Big fish, little fish. You heard about that? Anyway, in back of each painting, there's a Hawaiian tide calendar. And for my 60th birthday, I did 60 pieces of organic tile pieces. This is a show at the First Hawaiian Bank Center. They have an exhibition space. Isn't it great to have corporations supporting the arts? I mean, he's now built this for a permanent exhibition space besides the Honolulu Museum and the Contemporary Museum we have there now. That's my daughter's work. And this show was a family show. My wife's ceramics, my daughter's paintings. This is my wife's ceramic and painting together. And then my residency in Japan. I was there for a month and a half, Mount Fuji. At that time, the residency was right on the foothills of Mount Fuji. It was right in your face. And every day it looked different, and you can see the weather pattern change. But we were there to work. It snowed, so we couldn't go out. We had to work. And they gave us a small studio, a place to stay, and a cook, so we could work 14 hours a day. So while in Japan, oh, by the way, everything is specialized in Japan. So if you're a printmaker, if you're a wood cover, that's all you do, you carve. If you're a printer, that's all you do, you print. If you are paper mounter, that's all you do. Everything is specialized, and so is the tools. The tools are made for a specific reason. The little screen there, it's made out of horsehair that squeeze out the paste so that it takes all of the chunks off the rice paste so it's smooth and you can do your mounting a lot flatter. So it was, here's the paper mounter. He's showing us how to mount a thinner paper to a heavier paper. Not easy, especially with wet glue. And here's my research for global warming before I went to the residency. And I didn't know quite what I wanted, but I wanted to do, of course, I was there for the Japanese woodblock prints, so I decided I used the same format. Let me go back once more. Let's see, am I doing this right? So I wanted to identify my work to the old prints, the 17th century Japanese woodblock prints. So I used their format, and they have a standard size. The average print in Japan is 13 inches tall and 9 inches wide. So I said, well, I'll focus on that. All my prints will be 13 inches tall and 9 inches wide. And except I did diptychs, so I put them two together. And where the residency was at the lake, and one of the views of Hokusai. Remember Hokusai did 36 views of Mount Fuji? So I decided I'll do 36 views of water. So this is part of it here. I think this is in Hell. Oh, this is at the Donkey Mill. This is the art center we started. This is in Helena. I'm talking to kids. I showed the whole installation there and at the Holter Museum. I'm talking to kids here, and I'm trying to explain in third grade language, which is the host and which is the guest. So in these paintings, they're definitely, the environment, creating an environment, that's the host. It accommodates the guest. So I spent 3 hours painting the host and 2 seconds printing the guest. That was the whole idea of doing the host and the guest on there. And this is our gallery. We have a small gallery in Kona. We're now the oldest gallery. We've been there 47 years. And this is a rock I did after Fukushima, after the earthquake and the tidal wave. A lot of the plastic and items came from Japan to Alaska to Washington, Oregon, California, and it ended up on the Big Island. So all the items are made up, so you can see everyday items like spoon, forks, little tofu containers that surmount the rocks. And this is called coastline, and that's what happened to our coastline. So the plastic that doesn't come from this plastic island in the middle of the Pacific, as 3 times as big as Texas, comes to the Big Island. And it ends up with the most southern point of the United States, and that's on the Big Island of Hawaii. More plastic, but these are plastics I made with ceramics. And I put them together in a counterclock movement. All of the hurricanes are counterclock in the northern hemisphere. So more plastics. And 2016 was a terrible year for the coral reefs. We lost 90% of our coral reefs, so I started this series of just dead corals that floats, ends up on the shore on the Big Island. Okay, so these are mokuhanga to my students. Each one is printed separately, and they're done in reductive process. So you take one plank of wood, and you print several colors from the one plank of wood. Picasso called it destroying the block. So he was more honest, I think. You take one block and you carve multiple colors from one block. You print the lightest color to the darkest color. You'll be doing that in class. Watercolor, 30 feet these days. More woodblock prints. One day I got up, I wanted to do a 100-foot painting, so this was it. Some details. I'll go fast. And this is Brazil on the leaf. You can see South America, and where the reds are, the red dots are, is where they're burning the rainforest. And it's happening even more today. That map could turn red. So this is Brazil 90 years from now. Oh, pochoir. Something I learned from Liz. So I had no idea. And so I took this little stencil and did 365 little pochoirs from 6 different stencils. It's remarkable. I felt like a 4th grader. You could do a lot of things with a single stencil. And a piece I did at Anderson Wrench. It's that shape you see with the 2 squares missing there is it's a stand where they sold slaves on it. For some reason, they actually had stands in the south part of this country that auction off slaves on street corners. So I saw that in one of the prints here and wanted to do an installation out of it. Here's a detail. And this is my little town. Has a hotel, has a library, has a school, has all forms of religion, has 3 mechanics. What else do we have? All 2 liquor stores. That's important, I guess. And an art gallery. It's now turned into an art town. There's 8 galleries in this little town of Hulaloa. Details of my gallery, and here's some events at the nonprofit art center we created. It's called the Donkey Mill Art Center. We have a strong ceramic program, bring artists from various places in the world. There's Karen Kuhn. She's been here many times. She's a printmaker. We're looking at some of her prints there. And here's students sharing and talking about their work, just like we do it at the branch. We give hula lessons. That's the only difference. Here's a print of Red Grooms. I work with Bud Shark, and I carved the key blocks, so all the details you see there. And they went home and figured out the colors later on. But I, in this project, carved the key blocks. John Buck, this print was done at the Anderson Ranch. It's called, what is the title? Autumn Bouquet. I guess he sold spray flowers or grass when he was a kid to earn some money, and this is the print. There's John Buck and Hunter. They've both been here giving talks and doing print projects. We're doing one of his father's print. And this is when I knew Hunter was a really dedicated artist. So I gave him my apron, actually, right that day. Here we're hand rubbing the print, not with a baton, but with knobs and spoons and little letter openers to get into the unevenness of the height of the wood. John didn't care if the wood was different heights because he didn't have to print it. But it took a lot of work. We could do only one print a day, 4 of us robbing. And there's the print there. It's called Kona. But the best kept secret is that I've been a farmer for the last 50 years myself. I'm an organic farmer, and the biggest award I had, I think, of all my career is getting a national grant for good stewardship. So I've been an organic farmer for more than 50 years, and here I am. I still have 2.5 acres, and I have some coffee for you, Liz, and Pam. All right, thank you very much. Any questions? Sorry it took so long. Okay.
Thank you, Hiroki. Now it's a pleasure to introduce Betsy Alwin. Betsy Alwin is a sculptor working in ceramics and mixed media. She attended the Skowhegan School of Painting and Sculpture and holds an MFA from Illinois State University. She's the recipient of numerous awards, including a 2022 Artist Individual Support Grant from the Minnesota State Arts Board. And she recently completed a residency at the Jingzhen International Studios in China. Betsy is the visiting director of ceramics and expanded media at Anderson Ranch. Please give it up for Betsy.
Adjust that. Thank you, Lindsay, for that introduction. Thank you, Hiroki, for your lecture. I'm very pleased to follow that. And I'm going to plug this in. Okay. Thanks, Kevin. Ooh. There you go. You got it. All right. All right, so since I did deliver a talk last year, and that covered my entire career, I thought I'd limit this talk to giving just a little background of how I started doing what I'm doing now, what I've achieved in the last year. So I've been here for a year and about 4 months. And this is my second summer as the visiting director of ceramics and expanded media. It's been a wonderful year of discovery and adventure, to say the least. I'll start here with this work from 2013. This is a slip cast, draped, and hand-built work. I'm kind of a caster by trade. I do a lot of casting. I've done a lot of casting in my career. And what I love about casting is that you can take a form and you can transform it into another material, and you can see that form through the lens of a different materiality. And what I started doing, I was slip casting objects, and I got a notion one day to take lace, dip it in slip, and wrap slip cast objects with the porcelain slip, and then go back in and hand carve it. This is about 34 inches tall. And so I started working with lace in response to a need for reflection on contradictions that were appearing in my life. Those were related to a series of crises, both personal and worldly. And at some point, you get to an age where you realize that you can hold two truths at the same time, which is a very weird experience. You're in your prime, but you can die, so people are around you who are enjoying amazing, wonderful success, and other people who are, falling apart or passing away. But one quote that kind of resonated with me at that time and still does is by Kiki Smith, who said that life is both fragile and fierce. The will to live is very strong, but life is so fragile you can pierce it and it dies. So I was thinking about lace and that interplay between negative and positive, very sort of literally, and the delicate beauty of lace pattern and how it could both be strong, structural, and fragile when it's combined with ceramics. The history of lace also being a reflection of craft and labor and its motifs. And for my purposes, I was mostly interested in floral and botanical motifs. Also reflecting that human need for adornment or as a relationship to nature. So the symbolism of both a connection with the natural world and that of persistence of life. So I developed my process and my ideas. I like to learn as I go. I learn about the material, and this is true for everybody. You learn by doing, you're interacting with this material, you're pushing yourself to do some new things. And that way you get to know the material more and your ideas kind of progress. I incorporated the lace patterns with architectural forms. I think I was thinking very literally about anvils and hammers and imagining people thinking of, not maybe really doing it, but engaging with hammers and just imagining smashing them. And I started thinking about infrastructure and architecture and what we take for granted in our built environment as what we kind of take for granted as stable and solid when really it can be gone in an instant. And it finally dawned on me that architecture also was a metaphor for the body, and really what I was doing, I was thinking through these motifs really about the human form. I started incorporating other materials, specifically rebar, because I wanted there to be a language of building and a relationship between fragile material and kind of the anxiety of a seemingly incompatible material, steel and porcelain. Also, rebar is a material you don't usually see. It's an unsung hero of the building. It's often hidden in concrete, but it also is an amazing line in drawing space. This is a process shot. This is how I started doing this. And so I would slip cast forms, I'd build them, and then I would take lace, dip it in slip, and cover it and carve as I went. And what was great about that was I could do really intricate forms. What was the downside of that is I would buy lace and it would burn out in the kiln. So it made a beautiful surface, and it was cotton. I could only really use 100% cotton. It worked the best and was not toxic. But it meant that I would buy lace, and then I would use it up, and then I'd go back to get more lace, and if I needed that motif again or that lace pattern, often I couldn't find it. So in that, I was trying to figure out what I could do to preserve the lace, and it dawned on me then that one approach could be casting the lace itself. And so I made some slip casting molds, and I started casting and had a catalog of basically slab molds. So then I could take these slabs, and of course a slab mold, a plaster mold is going to have a life, but you can get many casts out of it at that point. So it allowed me the freedom to build a lot of different forms through slab building, and I could investigate those patterns and the forms together. So it gave me a lot more freedom, and also, the pressure of doing something really well because you had only one shot with lace was just a little too much pressure for me. I like the ability to be able to fail. But it also allowed me to work a little bit larger. So I could make these forms, and I could make several forms of the same lace. And this is an installation where the porcelain forms are stanchions. They look like they're holding up a tremendous amount of weight, but they're also very delicate and fine. Another approach would be to take cardboard forms or other forms that I built out of paper mache, cover those with lace, make complex molds for slip casting, and then slip cast. And what's nice about this is that the mold allows you to explore different kinds of clay bodies. You can explore different colors, and that's what's really great about casting. It's not just about making multiples, which is also nice, but it's also about being able to have the flexibility of discovering new things within the same form. And though the ideas that motivate my work are about some real existential concerns. I want them to be somewhat playful and sometimes humorous. I want viewers to come to the work and ask questions about, what is really happening here? Why is this rebar fuzzy? So I often flock my rebar now. And what are the forces at work here? Playing with perception of materiality and physics. I always admire painters and printmakers because their images don't have to really adhere to any kind of real rules of gravity or physics. There's a certain nonchalance about reflecting what is really possible. So I guess this work approaches the best way that I could evoke that irreverence for myself. And this is work, this rebar looks like a very fluid sort of fabric line, and it's really holding up the whole piece. So if it weren't there, the whole thing would collapse. So I really love that play of material and that mystery. And this is a self-portrait. At one point in the middle of the night, one night I had this idea that I could get up in the morning and cast my arm and make a lace arm. And it's about at the same height that it would be for my real arm if I were standing there. And it includes all these materials and ideas and forms that resonate for me throughout my life. It's a sort of a reflection of strength in impermanence. And this is the last piece I made before I came here. This is a wrecker. I made this in response to the pandemic. I just imagined the potential of this lace wrecking ball destroying everything and itself. I was feeling that kind of energy, I guess, after COVID. And so this was the last show that I had before I moved here. And then I came here, and I was spending the summer here. And throughout last year, I've been doing a bunch of different things, including going to China. But one of the things that I was really excited about was I developed a slip, a casting slip in porcelain for soda firing, and I've been working on that. This is a test brick. I often do little test bricks to, try out firing and to see how my techniques work in that form. And I've also been working on my own lace motifs. So this is kind of the next trajectory for me. I'm always trying to think what is the next logical step? And having commercial lace is fine, but I realize that having some control over my own pattern is really exciting. So I can create my own motifs and develop a narrative within that pattern. So I started working on different patterns, and I haven't, I'm not gonna have to turn them into lace, which is actually really good. I've been experimenting with digital processes where eventually I'll be cutting these directly into plaster using the CNC. This particular lace incorporates the cypress vine, which symbolizes love's mortality. But then it's part of this life cycle of pollination and regeneration. So I hand draw these, and then I bring them into digital space, and then I figure out how to repeat them in a pattern. And I laser cut this one right before I went to China. And I got a residency in China and went to Jindazhen this last February, and I was able to go for 3 weeks, which is a really wonderful amount of time, but also a very short amount of time. So I landed in Jindazhen. This is an unusually sunny day in Jindazhen. It can be very cloudy in February and very rainy. It was a beautiful day, and I just took in a lot while I was there. And I brought ideas such as that laser cut lace to use for sort of an incising tool. But I also was really open to learning more about the history there, the material, the clay, and how I could work with it. And one thing that I was really captivated by was the first thing I did actually was go to the museum. There was a porcelain museum in Jindazhen. And I saw many things, but one of the highlights was the carving. So they carve, they have master carvers, and they carve in bone dry clay. And it's gorgeous. I mean, I wish I could show you all of the carving that I saw, but I don't have that much time. But I was also just really fascinated by the culture of ceramics there. It is a city that is completely embedded with ceramics. It has ceramics everywhere. It's for sale. It's on the street. It's the light posts. It's the walls. It's everywhere, and it's gigantic. And you don't have to be a ceramic artist to be in Jindagen. You could be a painter, and you can come here and buy all the bisqueware you ever want and paint it and take it to the public kiln, have it fired, and you're on your way. I met many artisans, and I went around to different shops. This is a woman who was in partner with 2 other people. They started their own shop. She's working, and everybody's working in their shop. So you can come in and you buy things, but they're all working all day. So there's no magic factory anywhere else that's making this stuff. It's all being made right there and then being sent to the public kiln and brought back. This is my run every day. I would go running near the river, and this wall was just embedded with ceramic artifacts. Oh, you gotta go there. I mean, if not for this, for this. I mean, I'm short, but these are big. I mean, that's incredible, right? These are actually fired in 2 pieces and silicone together because they would not last in the kiln, they would collapse. But it was fascinating. We went to all these factories and saw all of these artisans who are specialized working on their craft. They were either painters or carvers or throwing. 3 people throw these on a wheel. They throw them in sections as a team. I also had the benefit of visiting many artists in Jindagen, and they were so gracious. This is Zhu Lejiang, and he and his wife made lunch for us. He's been an artist there for, 50 years, and he has this studio where he has all of examples of all of his work throughout his whole career, and he showed us around. And this is his patio full of his creatures there that are incredible. This is Jin Wenwei. He is the dean of the Jindagen University, Ceramics University. This is his studio, and it's got some Maoist propaganda on the wall from way back when, but he is very gracious too, working in mixed media, now working with photographs and doing a lot of collage work as well as ceramic. And of course, I was influenced by my cohort. I was there with people from all over the world. This is Eve Se from Korea, and she makes these giant sculptural figurines and also some smaller figurines. They're based on herself. They're sort of self-portraits. She told me this was the first one that ever had a smile. Usually they're just very sort of deadpan, or they don't have any expression at all. But she said she was inspired by the happiness of Chinese people. She didn't expect that. And so she had to put a smile on her sculpture, which I thought was like, that's the benefit of having a residency, is that you were just influenced. You think about things differently. This is Tomas Carpio. He's from Ecuador. He's a hand builder, really skilled, and it was really fun to hang out with him and see his process. This is Boz Vint-Un from Congo. He's actually staying there to go to graduate school and learning English and Chinese. He only spoke French, so we had to converse through the app on your phone, but we were fast friends, and he is an amazing sculptor, carving and hand building. This was my studio, and when I first got started. And I really was open. People warned me. They said, when you go to Jindagen, you're going to have a really hard time with the clay. That's all I kept hearing. I heard it from artists here. I heard it from artists who'd been there, and they said, it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard. And I kind of thought to myself, well, okay, should I be scared? Or should I just think, don't we all work in a clay that works for us? And so if you're working with a clay that's different, don't you try to work with it and try to learn from it and do something that it's kind of meant to do? So I brought my stencil and I was incising and just doing a bunch of tests. And because I was influenced by the carving there, I really wanted to try my hand at sort of hand carving some works. I didn't do it in bone dry. That was just too hard for me to learn right at the beginning, but I did do one slip cast. This is a tile. It's about 24 by 18 inches based on the other motif. And this is how I started with one of my patterns. I made a form that was simple. It was a kind of a test. And I just started with relief carving and then got to the place where I cut all the way through. And this is a couple of my works before they went into the kiln. And I made it under the wire. It's very wet there. It's not like here. We have the benefit of the dry air and the dry climate. It's super wet there. So some people are letting their work dry for a whole month or more before they fire it, depending on how big it is. I have the benefit of my work is very porous, so it dries very quickly. That's a finished piece when it came out of the kiln. And I didn't put any glaze on. I didn't want to do that, and I left all of my work there. I donated it to the residency because for me it was more about the experience and experimenting than it was about taking work home. I took all of my ideas and experiences home with me. And then I was invited back to the international fair. And I went and brought work from all the staff here to participate in the fair. So we representing the United States. And this is my work this is one of the soda-fired porcelain works that I made. I brought this small in my suitcase. And here's our booth with all of our work. You can see Joanne's work and Lindsay's work and Emil's work and everybody's work, Esther's. It was really fun. So that was my experience in China. If you get to go, I'd highly recommend it. It was a beautiful experience, and the history is amazing. And that's the end.
All right, thanks everybody. We are now gonna hold a Q&A. So we're gonna bring Betsy and Hiroki up to the front, and then just raise your hand if you have a question. Okay. I'll let them sit.
Hiroki, I'll let you guys share this mic, and I'll turn the lights down too. So
Oh, good. What are you giving it to me for? Nobody's asked anything.
Thank you for your fabulous lectures, both of you. It was wonderful. So glad I came. And Betsy, I wanted you to talk about your process of bending the rebar. You have some of those fabulous, almost like squiggle balls. Can you talk about how you made those forms?
Yeah, so I use an oxyacetylene torch with a cutting torch or a rosebud to make it hot. And to make a complex twist, what I do is I start with a really long piece, and I start sometimes in the middle and I work my way in, and other times I weld an extra piece on and make it a little bit seamless and keep bending. So that's my process of bending it. And it kind of, what happened was I was making really 90-degree angles, and that I got wrapped up in making very architecturally, 90-degree, perfectly level angles. And then I thought one day, oh, it's too perfect. There has to be some chaos there. And I just thought, well, rebar's always square, so why don't I mess it up a little bit and make it all weird? And then I was like, oh, this makes sense. This is balance. Yeah.
I like perfect.
Both of your work has so much dedication to process, and I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about how process becomes part of the content of the work.
Well, for me, the process is the work. So I'm constantly experimenting, and even as a younger artist, you just have to move on. And I know some old collectors want you to do the same thing forever, and but you know, you got to change, you got to move on, and you're going to find new audience. So expand your horizon and keep experimenting, and that's what I hopefully will get through my students in the next 2 weeks.
For me, process is a balance between problem solving and meditation. So the mold making for me is a tedious part, but also a lovely part because it's like solving a puzzle. And then making that work, there are definite frustrations within that. And then you get to a place where when I'm doing the carving, that part is the meditation where I can kind of zone out and just be. And I didn't always work that way, but I realized that I need that in some portion of my work because it makes, you go to a different place. You're in a different kind of concentration. And that for me is really valuable.
I'll just highlight on that. I think you're an engineer. That's what printmakers don't have to deal with. You have to do with balance, and so your right angle is as much as important as a curve, and weight. I don't have that, so yeah, I'm impressed.
Thank you both for the talk. My question is for both of you. With you both having spent so much time making and then kind of moving through different stages or different ideas that you're interested in or processes you're interested in, what questions now are you facing in your work? Like, what are the current things that you're like struggling with, like in past work where you've moved on from it? What are you facing now that you're like thinking through?
With the new lace designs that I'm making, actually had a thought about, well, maybe it doesn't have to be lace. I've been consumed with the lace texture and having it refer to that material of fabric. And now I'm not so sure that that's necessary. I really like the negative and the positive and the motifs, but I'm sort of still working that out. So I'll get back to you. But that's really kind of what I'm thinking through right now. And sometimes I ask myself when I have those questions come up, is it because it really doesn't make sense, or am I being lazy? I'm sure you have those questions.
Once again, what was the question?
Basically, just wondering what questions you're thinking through with the work you're working on currently.
As you can hear in my talk, I play with numbers. So, if even in discipline, I set a number, I'm going to do 50 prints. And I give myself a time limit. And within the time limit, and it's a given time limit, let's say in 2 months, I'll do 50 prints. So it's stretching the thinking process, it's stretching, reaching for images, and discovering new things as you're going. So but the number is a discipline, but also doing the 365 pourchois is all about global warming and the rising of the tide. So there's a big picture involved in that case, as well as learning as I'm going on there.
I had a question for Betsy. You talk a lot about working with the material and how it kind of this like push and pull relationship that you create with working with the material. Are there times when the material that you're working with just doesn't work and you have to move on, or do you always find a way?
That's a great question. No, I think that's, that's definitely has happened where I make something in a material that's just, nope, that's not it. But at least I have the mold to go back to, and I can try a different thing, potentially. So yeah, no, I think you always have that when you're a sculptor, and I know this happens to you too. You have an idea, and it's so vivid in your mind, and you're like, this is going to be the greatest thing, and then you're like, I'm going to turn this thing into this material, and you make it, and you look at it, and you're like, wow, that does not do what I thought it was going to do, and so it's a failure. But nothing. You have to do those things because one, you have to know, because that's that burning question you should have, and you should try to answer it. But on the other hand, there's always something from that failure that you're going to take to the next thing. So maybe the one part of it is not really working, but there's something else that you'll inevitably get from it, whether and you wouldn't have gotten there without having tried that. So yes, I hope that answered your question.
Well, a simple answer is a flaw can be a detail. So, you could go with it, you can correct it, you could make use of it. Well, as painters, we're looking for happy accidents. I guess if you make use of your flaw, or the flaw in the work, it could maybe even relax the piece a bit more. So you don't have to be so hard all the time. You can go with the flow.
All right, well, thanks so much, everybody. Just a reminder, orientation is at 8:45 right here tomorrow morning, but have a great night.
Okay. Thank you for coming.